What if somebody's just starting out, so they haven't gone through all the problems that their customers might be facing, so they're not fully aware, just like you were in the beginning? What are good steps to take? Should they ask their customers, or how they should find that empathy and try to put themselves in a position of the customer? Obviously that's different from niche to niche, but
yeah,
some advice on that.
Well, I think you're probably 50% of the way there with your own sort of insights as to, you know, what you're doing when you're imparting your expertise to somebody. You know, after a certain amount of time and a certain number of dealings with people that have recognized your value and have imparted their hard-earned money to access that value, you get to understand, just through doing what you do, probably 50% of the empathy position, I would say. You know, unless you're a complete sociopath and all you're doing is, you know, winking and smiling and picking their pockets and knowing that you can deliver just enough value so that they don't complain about it. But true expertise doesn't really operate like that, right? So then beyond that, it's really just a case of putting yourself in the shoes of the customer and then ask the question, what am I trying to achieve? What's important to me? What are my responses going to be if things go wrong? So if you think about every angle of what you're doing from the perspective of the customer, and then of course if you've got the kind of relationships with customers that are close that allow you to ask those questions, go on a deep dive with them and say, you know, look, why did you ultimately decide that you wanted to run with me or my firm? What was it that made us attractive to you? What do you think it was that differentiated us from our competition? What was it in the way that you concluded through the exposure to, you know, us as an organisation and say me as an individual professional? What was that journey like for you, and what were you thinking about as you went through that? So it's really just a case of putting yourself in the shoes of the customer and doing some really deep and meaningful thinking about that value exchange. And once you understand why it is ultimately they are transacting with you and not somebody else, and coupled with your own intuition as to what you think is going on, I think pretty quickly you'll settle on what it is that's the catalyst to the value exchange. So what is it that the customer is actually getting from you? Now, it may take you, you know, a little while to really fathom that out, right? But that's the heart of the intelligent content marketing strategy, because you have to know what you sell. And if you know what you sell, everything flows from that. And one of the greatest sort of, you know, let's say unresolved questions about the whole intelligent content marketing strategy is, actually, when you get right down to it, is your counterparty in any event always buying peace of mind, irrespective of what your niche is and what your proposition is?
Okay, so essentially by peace of mind you mean taking their problems and taking them on your shoulders, essentially. So you take the problem off of them, they buy peace of mind, but how you draw the line? You don't want to have all the people's problems, obviously, as you. Have you encountered that when they just ask too much? Some people, when you offer them that peace of mind, they go overboard and start asking you for additional things.
Well, remember, right, peace of mind is delivered on many levels. It just depends on the party that's doing the taking. So, you know, you probably find that 80% of everybody who comes your way and interacts with your proposition, you've delivered the necessary peace of mind that they need for where they are in the process, just through the information and the questions that you've answered, just via your content proposition. So, you know, moving then into a situation where the peace of mind that you want to deliver is delivered in such a way against the true exchange of value, then you have to come up with a mechanism in your proposition that says this is the defining line between where you get what you need from us completely out there, really without any investment apart from your attention and intellectual endeavour on your part, But if you get into this realm, this is where, we are now delivering value in a way that it represents the fundamental exchange between us both. And for us, the way I define it is, in very broad terms, the difference between a paid and an unpaid delivery of peace of mind is where we pick up a pen. Because prior to picking up a pen in immigration, ultimately you need to have a kind of an exchange and a dialogue to understand what the real problem is, to know exactly how you're going to be able to deliver value if they ask you to deliver value on a paid basis. So for us, it's just a case of, well, we'll help you as much as we possibly can. We'll answer your questions via the blog. If you reach out to me with a question that is going to take me an hour to podcast an answer to because of all the variables, then what I would do is I'd invite you to have a conversation with me, and I'll speak to you for 10 or 15 minutes, right? And the interesting point about that is that, of course, because you're developing this proposition that's new, it's novel, the prospects, the future tribe, the parties you're seeking to have relationships with, they've never seen anything like this before, so they don't know the rules, right? So you've got to sort of bring it into yourself to, get them to the point where they've got everything that they need in hand from an information and education perspective to make an informed decision. Do they pay, or do they continue to sort of manage it themselves using our scaled content resource platform? And this materializes in quite frequently when I'll have perhaps received a question via the website, and I can't podcast an answer to it for any number of reasons. Maybe it's too detail specific, or it would be very easy for the general public to potentially identify the party who's asked me the question because of the facts. So I've got to engage in these intellectual gymnastics to try and protect them all. And then ultimately, I have to ask myself, by adding this question to our content pool on the web, am I actually augmenting it in a meaningful sense? Or am I better off just spending 10 or 15 minutes on the phone, one-to-one with the person that's asked me this question, and then just give them the advice that they need once I've been able to solicit all the variables and all the other things that are going on so I can understand the total picture. So it quite often happens like that. I go through that process, too complicated for the blog to answer that question, don't want the customer, the prospect, the relationship to be without an answer. So I'll ask them to call me at such and such a time, and we'll have a conversation. And then I would say half of the time what happens is that we'll go through that process, I educate them, they know what it's all about, and then they'll say to me, well, in order for me to report this to my boss, could you just write me an email with that down? And I say, well, I can do that, but unfortunately this is where we end the free stuff, and we move into the realm of where we actually get compensated for what we do. So I'm more than happy to reduce what I've discussed with you to writing, but there will be a charge to that, and our minimum charge out rate for that kind of thing would be our 2,000 Hong Kong dollars an hour for that. And then 50% of the times the client will say, okay, right, no, okay, appreciate that, thank you. And then, I've taken it as far as I can between free and paid. And then for the other half of the time they'll say, oh, yeah, I think that's reasonable. If you do that, can you do that for us, please? And then, if we do that, then of course that 2,000 Hong Kong dollars that they've paid us to reduce what we've said thus far to writing. So when we have reduced the advice that has been until now completely free to writing because they've asked us to do and they've instructed us to do it, that 2,000 Hong Kong dollars will then get discounted from any additional fee that they pay us subsequently to perhaps handle the whole application for them. So, it's a progression naturally in the way that we've laid out our business model and our service proposition, so that you can engage with us really right up to the nth degree, and it's costing you nothing. But as we move over the line, it's quite reasonable from where we're doing it for free to where we have an expectation of compensation, because that's where the value exchange really occurs. It's actually quite a seamless transition, because you've forged a relationship with people by the time you get to them, and then you get to know those people who, as I've said before, those that want to pay and those that don't want to pay. But those who don't want to pay shouldn't be filtered out at all. They should be encouraged and promoted and supported, because that's the equity in the business, in the connection economy.
So they essentially become the tribe, usually the people who are getting value for free out of what you provide as content out there, and they're the ones spreading the word for your business. Have you seen that? Have you experienced it in your business?
Over and over again. Over and over again. It's very difficult to know where all our business comes from now, because after almost 7 years of applying these techniques and having an intelligent content marketing strategy, word of mouth referrals, relationships through channel partners, people that I may have met in one of the public presentations that I've given, and I've obviously made some sort of impression there, and then a few months later, when the circumstances change, they reach out and connect with us, and they've decided that now they want to progress to have us help them actually solve the particular immigration problem that they've got. It's amazing where the relationships come from, but you can't deny the fact that prior to 2011 and having the content platform that we've got now, we had no means whatsoever of creating any of those relationships. Now we've got this huge asset that just delivers relationships day in, day out, and in that respect, the strategy works, because you've no idea where the business comes from, and you've got, in our instance, 150,000 individuals that you've touched at some level or another, either through passive exposure to the content on our sites, or because they've asked us a question via our blog, or whether they've reached out to us and I've had a conversation with them, and then they've been empowered to make informed decisions. Knowing that that's coming from, the recognised, acknowledged expert in this space, that would normally, in a scarcity economy, command significant amounts of money to be able to even begin to approach. Knowing that you can access and tap into that expertise at almost any level for no cost whatsoever, empowering the solution to problems, is very, very, very compelling, and it's a phenomenally misunderstood phenomenon of the abundance society rather than the scarcity society. With abundance, you ultimately boil down to what it really counts, right? Which is, what is that one thing that these guys can give me, that they've already given me everything else, but it's the one thing that I can't get any other way. That's the key to success. Identify that and build your proposition around that, whatever it is. And I've called intelligent content marketing as an intellectual silver bullet, right? Because if you take these ideas and you apply them as a formula applicable in the connection economy, then you will get a solution. You will get the one thing that you need to be successful, but it's a mere intellectual silver bullet, because you've still got to do the work. You've got to do the thinking. You've got to design your proposition around what it is that you're actually selling that represents the expertise as such that people are prepared to part with their money for.